Welcome back to Youth Code Jam's online bits and bytes lessons. We are up to lesson 14. We're going to be doing another Python activity today called Guess the Number. A few things before we get started. I do recommend that you are using a desktop or laptop computer for this activity because it is text-based. And those tend to be, at least for me, those are easier to type on than my phone or a tablet. An exception for the tablet might be if you have a keyboard that you can connect to it. So if your iPad or Samsung tablet, whatever you have an additional keyboard, this will work pretty well for that. You can, of course, do this on mobile devices. It will just be a little slower and a little bit more tedious for you. It will be harder to see the screen between what you're typing and what you should be typing. So we do recommend something with a larger screen and a keyboard attached is going to be best, but that doesn't mean you can't do it on mobile. You're just going to need to be a little bit more patient. And because this is text-based code instead of block-based code, we recommend it for middle school starting in about 6th grade to 12th graders, just because of how you have to use it. Most elementary schools have not taught students typing basics yet, so we don't expect them to have those skills unless they've learned it on their own. That said, if students want to practice their typing or they want to try it out anyways because they want to see how text code works as opposed to block coding like with Scratch or the code.org activities, that's fine. The video is recorded so you can pause and go at your own pace, and you have the activity sheet for this one. So, and that is available in English and Spanish. So it will be a little easier to do so if typing is new or if Python is new. Reminder, we upload new lessons Mondays and Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. They're supposed to go live. They should be going live then. We are still holding our Q&A sessions at 4 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those require you to register so we can send you a secure link. That email you get and sign up for only for these sessions. You won't get anything else from us. So we won't be spamming your email or anything like that. These sessions are a great chance for kids to show off what they did or ask questions about something if they got stuck. We know that's probably not happening too much, just because you do have the video and then usually an activity sheet to accompany it. So a lot of questions get answered. But if there's something like, instead of how do I do this, it's a why did we do it this way? Or I found another way to do this, we would be happy to talk to kids about that. Also, if they want to show off another project they've been working on, they're welcome to come online and do that. It's a safe space. There's 2 YCJ staff members there. And like we said, it's with a secure link so that students are not, it's not a public meeting. Not anyone can join and we monitor it. So it's a really good chance for kids to share and also tell us what kind of activities they've liked, which one of the Scratch activities they really liked to do, which one wasn't really a lot of fun for them, because we can plan, and if we get that kind of feedback, we can plan more activities that they enjoyed as opposed to activities that they didn't really enjoy that much, or come up with ones that go more into detail about certain aspects of the code they liked. So please, to sign up for these, you're just going to go to our website at youthcodejam.org, and on our Bits and Bytes page under the Jam at Home option, you're going to go to Bits and Bytes Online, and then our registration is right here. So you just click that button and you can go sign up for not only these activities, so our live sessions, but you can sign up for other activities that we're offering. One thing we are doing right now is our She Code Connect meetings are available. So those are for middle and high school girls. We meet every 2nd and 4th Saturday of the month. So we just had our 2nd meeting for April this past Saturday. And we're basically doing kind of building relationships and talking about code and working on different projects. The girls are really getting to direct those meetings. So we get feedback from them and we plan according to what they said they were interested in doing. So this past week, they learned how to do a 20 questions game in Scratch. They were given some very basic code and then allowed to kind of play with it and work with it as they wanted. So if you know or are a middle to high school age girl, we encourage you to sign up for that. Our jam has wrapped up, but I know there's other stuff coming down. So as that information is sent to me, I will try and share it with you all here. Before we get started, we are going to get started. So as you all know, our most recent lesson will be at the top of this page here with recommendations down here, a little info. If the video is never not working, we'll have the YouTube link here in case for some reason something broke on the page, it will work on YouTube. So we always have that backup. This last activity we did that you see now didn't have any documents with it because the point of it was for you to kind of think through how we get through a program without an activity sheet. Just to kind of let kids see that was for younger students. So that was just kind of to get them used to that, because if you're taking CS classes in your middle or high schools, you know that a lot of times you're given a list of requirements, but you're not given the exact code to go through and use. You have to figure that out. So this was kind of to let them see how to do that, or one way to do that, because there's always more than one way. So that's why there's no activity sheets here. There will be for this today. I will be using it more as a reference to copy code than to follow it exactly, because I don't have the code memorized, but those will be available for you to download. And like I said earlier, they will be in English and Spanish. So it will look something like this page. I've guessed the number up here. Can I? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to have this pulled off to the side, and I'm going to shrink my browser down so that we kind of look at both as much as possible while we're working through this. So we're going to use the online IDE Replit, and we're going to, it's defaulting to Java in my browser, but after this last backslash, I'm going to change it to Python 3. Python 3 is, to my knowledge, the most up-to-date version of Python, so it's what most things are going to use. That being said, if you've used computer programming for any amount of time now, you know that there's always older versions or code languages out there that you need to be familiar with. But we're just going to be sticking with Python 3, and there won't be anything too tricky. Okay, so this is more of a beginner exercise than what we did last week. Last week was a little bit more advanced. If you remember, we did Crack the Code, which was a text version of the Caesar cipher that we did in Scratch way back at the beginning of April, end of March, somewhere around there. All my weeks are blurring together. This week we're going to use a random number generator, and you, the user, are going to try and guess what the, I believe, yes, you are going to try and guess the random number the computer comes up with. And you'll have so many tries, so I think we'll be doing some loops again and user input validation, but will be a little bit easier. So if last week was hard, this week should be pretty simple for you. So we're already on our page. Most programming language already have code to implement a somewhat random number. What you'll learn as you go further through it is that there's no way to truly create a random number, because what it does is it pulls, usually in my C course, it pulled something related to the time that it was, so pulled something from there, and if you run that random number so close together, the time doesn't differentiate enough, isn't different enough to really create it, so your random numbers are more similar or more logically picked than truly random. But this is about as close as we can get computers to do. Remember, the computer, while very smart and very powerful, is only truly as smart right now as the programmer. Same with the program. So it's up to what we can do with it and how you can figure out how to randomize it. So there are these functions pre-created that we're going to use. So we're going to, on our first line, import all lowercase the random library, and just hit enter. And then we're going to make our comp underscore number equals random dot rand int, open parentheses 1, comma 10. All right, so let's look at this line for just a minute. So like I said before, we're importing the random library essentially into our program. So we're going to have access to everything in that library, including the random function. And then on the second line, this is even though we don't declare it as such, this is an integer number, which means it's a whole number like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The formatting here is called snake case because of this underscore. So in Python, you do all lowercase, and then between words, you typically do this underscore character. In Java and C, you tend to do camel case, which is the first starts lowercase, and then the second word that you have there is an uppercase. These are just conventions that have developed over time. Somebody a long time ago decided this is what we're doing. In the case of Python, they probably decided that to make it a little different, even though if you did our Java activities, you can already tell the difference between this code and Java, because for starters, we don't have to put the semicolon at the end of Python. Depending on your interpreter, your editor that you're using, compiler, whatever, you might be able to get away with adding those semicolons and that it won't get angry, but that's not every situation. So we're going to stick to as best practices as possible. So we have our integer variable computer number here. This is going to be the random number the computer makes. We're using random here. So this calls the first generator, right? So we're going to pick a random something. This random int tells it to convert whatever we return to an integer. So we want it to be a whole number. And that's what's telling this variable right here what kind of variable it is, what data type it holds. And then the 1 and the 10 are the range. So we're starting from 1 and going to 10. What I'm not sure here is if 10 is inclusive or not. So what that means is that it could pick a random number between 1 and 10, but it may not pick 10 ever. I'm not entirely sure. I think it is inclusive, so we'll see. It's not clear, but 1 is an option. So usually in Python, this first argument in a range is going to be inclusive. I think in random, if I'm remembering correctly, your second argument 10 is inclusive. So it could be any number between 1 and 10, including 1 and 10. Okay, so on to step 2. I might add extra spaces between mine because that helps me keep track of what step we're on. I know what you're thinking, there's lines on the code, but I need extra clues sometimes. So now the computer comes up with its number. The user needs to come up with theirs. And so we're going to create a user number. And that's going to be entered via the keyboard. So in this case, you're going to type in user underscore number equals int. So this int is going to cast. If you remember, anything entered through the keyboard by the user is going to be a string, even if it's a number. So this int function that you hear, this is a cast function that we see. Whatever we put inside these parentheses will be cast to an integer if it's possible to cast it to an integer. If we enter something crazy, like I think a question mark will produce an error, so that's something we'll check in a bit. But so we're going to do int input. That input function allows us to not only print text to the screen, but have the user enter something. If we just printed, then the user wouldn't be able to do anything. And this also ties it to the variable. Okay. So on step 3, so now we're going to get into our input validation. So we're going to say if our guess was too low or too high, or if we got it. So remember, we're comparing against the computer, so we're trying to guess the computer's number. The computer is not going to guess ours. There probably is a way to do that off the top of my head. Nothing's coming to mind, but that might be a fun project to do to see if you could have the computer guess a number. Of course, you would have to set, we're not working with AI level stuff here, you would have to set a range, which is kind of what we did with our 20 questions with the girls at our She Could Connect meeting this last week, was that we gave the user a set of colors they could choose from, and then they went through and answered a preset, they answered questions that we came up with to try and guess which color but they had to pick a color from that set. They couldn't pick, we did the rainbow in black and white, so they couldn't pick magenta. Magenta wasn't included. If they picked that, the program wasn't going to be able to guess it. So you'd have to have something stored of yours in there to see if the computer would guess it. Anyways, now we're going to validate. So we're going to do if the computer number is greater than the user number, we'll print your guess is too low. And then we'll do it. So we're going to do a elif statement here, which is just an else if statement, but Python shortens it because programmers are lazy. It's very true. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. That usually means that you're going to maybe be better at finding more efficient code. And that's good, because the most efficient code is how you want to do it. So now we're comparing if the computer number is less than our number, then we're going to say your guess is too high. And then finally, we're going to print else so else we're saying if it's not too low or too high, you figured it out. That means we're assuming here that you guessed the number exactly. You guessed the right number. Okay. And then, so if you remember from last time, or if you're familiar with Java and having some issues here, you can see on our lines over here that certain things are lined up to the very left, and we have the indents. These indents are very important since, unlike Java, we're not using curly brackets to enclose our action items from our conditional statements up here. So you'll indent the the practice is a four spaces equals one indent. So you'll indent once to go inside of your if statement and say this is what you do if this is the situation, and then you'll come back out here for your else. So notice that everything's lining up, and what we're printing is indented for the action items of our if statement. And for this line on 12, I'm going to come back out here and then hit print. So this is going to print regardless of what happens in our code. So at the very end, it will print this and then close the function. So we're going to run this, test it out, see what errors pop up. Guess the computer number, I'm going to say 7. Your guess was too low, the random number was 8, so, but not bad. So what you saw here is that it's only going to go through one time. We don't have it looping. If you go back to last week's lesson on Thursday where we did crack the code, you'll see a way to repeat the loop, to loop through and guess that number over and over again. But for right now, you can just do it once. So let's see if I can produce that error earlier I was talking about. So if I put in a question mark, yeah. So it's got to be a number. Value error, invalid literal for int with base 10. So it's like, I can't convert that to an integer at all. So let's run it again. I like to try and break it to see where it is. What if I typed in A? Okay, so same thing. So that int is not only going to accept a number between 0 and 9, or a input using numbers between 0 and 9. So we could probably, let's just go big. We'll go to 100. Our guess was way too high because we don't know what the range is, right? So that's something we talk about in the previous lesson, was user experience, kind of. We didn't tell the user what the range was. We gave the computer a range of 1 to 10, but we didn't tell the user that at all. So the user could guess 300, 3,000, 300,000. You know, they could be guessing these huge numbers that aren't even an option because the computer can only pick a number between 1 and 10. So that could be something that you would add for a real program is guess the computer number between 1 and 10 is something that probably should be added there so that your user knows like what's a valid guess. So if you saw this time, it said it was 7. Let's see. I want to see if I can get it. Nope. Too low. That time it was 10. So yep, 10 was inclusive. We got it to show that. But yeah, so that's the basis of the basic part of this activity we're doing today. You could go to the adventure mode and you can try to generate a number between 1 and 100. You could try and have it guess a name. Ask the user for a name, and instead of using pronouns, make the computer use the user's name. I'm not really sure how that works into random, but you could. So you could try that. I guess instead of you could have it say, you could have it ask for your name at the beginning, and then when it's asking for input, you could say, Bob, guess the name of the number. Have the user guess the number 3 times using loops. So that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, is that you could give the user 3 chances using a loop to try and guess the number. And then if they don't get it after the 3rd one, you exit and end the program. Or you could have them do an infinite loop like we did in Crack the Code until they say, no, I don't want to guess again, or no, I don't want to do this again. And on that, same thing here. You could ask the user for how many guesses they want and then base the loop on that. So you would need a counter variable. All those loops, if you go back and look at the Crack the Code Python, you will have some examples of how to do that. And looking online, those are going to be some very simple things that you can look online and figure out. So yeah, I know this was a fast lesson and very small, but you have lots of room to kind of expand on this and create your own game. Random is really good for games, actually, so you could kind of just try and figure out your own game that you want to build. I hope to see you all at our online session on Thursday, April 30th at 4 p.m. I would really like to see what you guys worked on and hear about how these lessons are working for you. Until then, have a great evening and rest of your week.